Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this morning. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes as people join the webinar. Hi, everyone. People are still joining, so I'll just give it a few minutes before we kick things off. Good morning, everyone. Just waiting a couple of minutes before we kick things off. Okay, looks like we've got a good number of people now, so I will get going. Good morning, welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning. My name's Hannah Shapansky, and I'm from Mutual Ventures, and I'm really pleased to welcome you to today's webinar. Just a quick reminder about why we're here today. So, helping people with health conditions return to work is a key part of the government's plan to get Britain working. And we all know that achieving this will require genuine partnership working between the NHS and employment services, with GPs playing a big part in this role. Today, we're here to discuss work that's been going on in Durham Tees Valley. So there's a model that's been for over 15 years supporting patients by embedding employment advice directly within their GP surgeries. And this approach has helped thousands of patients to improve their employment outcomes. And it's a great example of what's possible when health and employment support are truly joined up. This webinar is part of the WorkWell programme, which is a national programme funded by the DWP and the Department of Health and Social Care to support people with health-related conditions to get the support they need to stay in or return to work. There are 15 pilot areas across England, and welcome to all colleagues that are joining from the programme, as well as others joining from outside the programme this morning. I'm really pleased to be joined by Martin Harvey from the Patient Advisory Service, and hopefully soon we'll be joined by Dr. Katie Wilson also. And today we're going to be exploring how the Patient Advisory Service works in practice, what makes it successful, and what other areas can learn from it. Just a few points of housekeeping before we kick off. Hopefully people will be able to see the on-screen Q&A facility. We really want this to be as interactive as possible, so please do send any questions through and we'll try to get to as many of these as possible. We're also recording the webinar this morning, and we'll be sending a link out to the recording afterwards in case you'd like to go back to anything that's said or share it with other colleagues. So I'll begin, if that's okay, by asking Martin to introduce yourself.
Good morning, my name's Martin Harvey. I actually work on the Patient Advisory Service in Durham Tees Valley, which is a service provided by DWP, which has been running in our district since 2008.
Great. Thanks, Martin. Before we get into the model and the work that you're doing, I wanted to start with a more general question, which is what motivates you in your work and keeps you passionate about supporting people to return to work or stay in work?
I think with the role that I do, I think the advantage that we've got is we can work in an environment with patients that they're comfortable in. And it allows us to make a massive difference both to the GPs, the amount of support we give the GPs with the patients, but also helping the patients change not only direction, but the lifestyle moving forward so they can manage the condition better, they can move forward better, they have better financial outcomes, and managing their health better as well, because the link between work and health is completely joined. And it's joining those things together in a business sense to get that result for the patient, really. It's a great job and it makes a big difference, and that's why you get out of bed in the morning to do it.
Great. So do you mind starting off then by just telling us how the Patient Advisory Service first came about in Durham and Tees Valley? I think it was 15 years ago.
It was actually 2008. It started as part of a job centre pilot that was set up actually in 2006 in, I think it was Liverpool, Manchester, and a couple of southern areas as well. And we joined that national pilot in 2008. The remit for the national pilot was basically to engage with GPs and basically getting in and build a platform. So a lot of what we do are basically designed with the GPs at the start of the program. So it was a joint effort to build what this support network would look like and how it would benefit both the GPs and the patients moving forward. The national pilot ran until 2010, when austerity hit, government changes, and the national pilot disappeared. But as a district in Durham Tees Valley, because of the success that we were having, we actually continued with that service as a non-funded support for GPs because of the results that we were getting for both stopping people getting to the benefit stage, but also those long-term benefit customers that aren't progressing and go to see the GPs regularly as well. I think our original target was to target long-term benefit customers, but on the back of a study by Lara Shemtob, which basically stated that 1 in 5 people that get a fit note after 4 weeks never return to work. And when that gets to 26 weeks, 4 out of 5 of those patients never return to work. It was about front-loading support to help employed people to stay in work or transition into a more suitable job for them. I think by front-loading the support, the big advantage that gives us, we can actually deal with the situation and not a symptom of a situation. So it could be as simple as somebody who's got a bad back because they need a workstation assessment doing at work. But if that's not addressed and you're getting 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks down the line, then the social aspect starts to kick in. The disengagement, the confidence issues start to kick in, and it becomes harder and harder for that patient to return to work. So it's actually being able to deal front end with the small problem and stopping that escalating. And I think from a job centre's point of view, if we've got somebody who's employed and they get paid for 6 months or on a statutory sick pay for 28 weeks, they wouldn't actually contact the job centre until January week 28. So we're never dealing with this, with the actual problem. We're dealing with the symptom of the situation. So everything that's gone wrong since they've been off work. So by front loading the support, we can move those patients forward much, much quicker and either keep them in work or can we get them back to work on amended duties. But whilst they're back at work, if that job isn't the actual solution for them, continue working with them to find the long-term sustainable solution.
Yeah.
Because it's a long-term sustainable solution that actually gets the wins for the GP, the patient, and DWP.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. That's really helpful. And welcome, Dr. Katie. I'll just ask Martin one more question and then I'll come to you to introduce yourself. Do you mind telling us a bit more, Martin, then about how the model the service looks in practice? So could you walk us through what the journey looks like for a patient once they're referred? What happens when they see a patient advisor?
Yeah, I mean, the process is triggered generally by a fit note. So why is that patient going to see a fit note? Is it a health issue? Is it a health and situational issue? Or is it just a situational issue where the patient needs the fit note to get out of the situation so that they're not in a position to actually deal with it? I think it's really important for our role that we embed as part of the surgery, so we feel very much part of the surgery team. So it feels no different to a GP referring into us than what it would do referring into blood tests, diabetes referrals, heart referrals. We do make the effort to become integrated and part of that team. We have no restrictions on who we see. We will see anybody that goes into that surgery, whether they be unemployed, struggling at work, economically inactive. It's all about helping them progress. A lot about what we do is helping that patient paint that picture that their solution looks like, and giving them the hand-holding support to move them forward. Because I think that the big thing is a lot of the time, and I think probably Katie will agree with this, the GP is actually dealing with a situation, not a health problem. So they can go to the GP as often as they want, and if that situation is not resolved, they're not going to progress. So our role is to progress that patient with the non-medical stuff.
Yeah.
And I think what we've got to stress with what we do, we're not here to have health conversations. Ours is all about the situational stuff. We're not giving medical advice, but we're looking at how that condition affects the patient within the work environment and what changes need to be made to help that patient move forward. We work everything on a GP system, so we use System 1 or EMIS Web. So There's no paperwork involved for the GP to make the referral. It's literally just a couple of clicks of a mouse button and they book the appointment. And we can then pick up why the referral was made from the patient notes. And then we will update the patient notes with what we're doing to improve that person's situation. So the GP is always aware of what the plan is and what the next step is for that patient. The big thing for us, it's a voluntary service. There's no impact on money. There's no benefit discussions in what we do. It's all about progression. And I think the key is because of where we're embedded and where we are, a patient goes to a doctor's surgery to tell. They certainly don't go into a job centre environment necessarily to tell the whole story. So we've given them an environment they're comfortable with to disclose what the real problems are so we can support them with what the actual problems are.
Yeah. Thanks, Martin. That's really helpful. And good morning, Dr. Katie. Thank you for joining us. I wondered if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and also sharing what difference the patient advisory service makes for you and your patients.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Dr. Katie Wilson. I work in Kingsway Medical Centre. I'm here for 4 full days a week, and FitNote's a massive part of workload at the moment, and well, always have been, but are a huge part of it. And like Martin says, quite often our encounters are to do with patients in difficult situations who might be struggling, and they keep coming back to see us, and we can't necessarily help them change their situation. Our experience with Martin is extremely positive, that we, for a few reasons, but one, there's no exclusion criteria. So it doesn't matter whether the patient is employed, unemployed, how long they've been unemployed for, whether they've seen him before, what they need. Martin will see them, and there's no limit on how often he will see them. So for some people, it might just be a bit of work advice, a bit of a grievance that's going on, change the chair, speak to the manager, you can get some support from the union, that's all you need. For other people, it's an ongoing thing that they need support from Martin, once a fortnight for several months. But there's nothing that says you get your 12 sessions and you have to start again, or you'll be fixed, because that's just not realistic. So for us, he's good for those small wins, those people that just need a bit of guidance, but he's also good for those patients that we've got who are chronically out of work or might never have worked, and have got generation of people that have never worked, and he's very good at bringing those in and thinking about work. So yeah, very good.
That's really helpful, Katie. And just in terms of your practice, what kind of impact has it made on your job? Is it saved you time, or?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it definitely does save us time. It gives us a different sort of avenue to go down. So whereas these people before, they wouldn't want to go to the job centre for advice, so they'd be coming back to the health setting. So it certainly saved us appointments. At the minute, we're trying to get some figures, aren't we, Martin, to sort of quantify, but it just feels like there is an awful lot of burden that's been lifted by Martin, but we haven't got the figures for that. But yeah, these people that were coming all of the time for to see a health professional, Martin takes off our hands, really, and then he can deal with this fit note as well, ask us what to write, how long they need it for, so that can just be done by a task. So that's a huge amount of work for us done by Martin.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Dr. Katie. Martin, a quick question for you around kind of scale of the patient advisory service, if that's okay. So how many sites are you operating across? How many members of your team? It'd just be great to get a sense of that, please.
Yeah, we're a team of 5. And across Durham Tees Valley, we currently offer the service to 73 surgeries. We're face-to-face in 33 of them, and the others we effectively act as hubs. So if a PCN has 4 sites, we might locate in 2, but all 4 sites can refer into us. We work on a rolling 2-week diary, so each surgery has got set slots, so there are no new appointments they've got to book into. An average day we would do 16 appointments generally on an average day. Some of the bigger sites, it's 18 to 20, depending on what the referrals are coming through like. Our district is currently transitioning, so our district is changing with effect from today. So we're no longer Durham Tees Valley. We're Tees in Cumbria, and Durham's moving up with Northumbria. So there's a bit of shift at the moment, both in staff and surgeries. But yeah, we're busy. And I think there's 27 PCNs in the Durham Tees Valley region, and we're offering the service at the moment to 26 of them.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. That's really helpful. It'd be great to talk some more about impact, if that's okay. And I know Dr. Katie has touched on this already, but are you okay to talk a bit more about the outcomes that you've been achieving for your patients? And if you've got any numbers to hand, that would be great, or any kind of stories that stand out for you.
I mean, purely on numbers wise, I think a nice figure to remember for today. So up to yesterday, we got 2,222 people back into work. Those vary from people that have been off work for a couple of weeks to, I think, probably our big success story for this year is somebody who's been on benefits for 31 years.
Yeah.
Had borderline personality disorder, fibromyalgia, other arthritic problems. If she could live in a world without people, she'd do really well. But she's very, very creative. So we've worked her through both educational routes, voluntary routes, to get her to the point now where she's actually working as a self-employed artist. So we've got her a space in the gallery where she can go and work for half a day a week to do her artwork. Then the gallery will sell her work on for her. She still gets the benefits, so there's no impact on her money. So that it's low risk for her. She's not going to lose her money. But it's, I think when I spoke to the GP before, she'd had something like 87 appointments in the last 2 years with the GP. Since she's been working with us, she's had one. Now, the GP had to book her 40-minute appointments because she knew her appointment would last an hour, regardless of whether it was booked in for 10 minutes. So that's where the saving kicks into the GP. For the patient's point of view, she's earning a little bit more money. She's also got a little bit of social going on, which she didn't have before. It's a really controlled environment that we've managed to pull together for her. And it's the long-term people that make the biggest difference to, obviously, the front end stuff where people are at work. It can be 2 or 3 interviews and they're sorted. And then we might do 1 or 2 interviews to follow that up to give him work support to transition them back into work. Because generally, if there's going to be a problem, it'll be in the first few weeks. So if we cover that transition. And I think the big thing with us is each surgery has their own PAS work coach. So the person doesn't change. So it allows us to build up relationship. It allows us to build up trust, not just with the patient, but also with the GPs. And it just pulls everything together there. It just fits. And I think from a work point of view, from somebody who's worked in the job centre for a long time, the patients are so much more responsive. One, because it's a voluntary service and there's no impact on monies with what they do. But also, as I say, the environment they're comfortable in, and they go into the surgery to tell. And I think sometimes it allows us to filter out the information that we don't need. I mean, the initial interview for us is very much a free hit for the patient. So we basically say, what's going on? But at the end of that interview, we do stress to them that we're not there to give them support with their health. We're there to help them with all the situational stuff. And how do these problems affect you in the workplace? And then taking the conversations forward from there.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And just thinking about the kind of front end of the spectrum, and then also the kind of support to in-work participants, have you found that the kind of support that you need to provide differs depending on that, where they are in that spectrum, or is it the same approach that you take regardless of where they are in their kind of journey?
It's very difficult to be specific because our interviews are tailored to the individual. There's no set process. Because obviously in this sort of environment, you do get more and more things disclosed as you go through the process. In a lot of cases, we get disclosed a lot of stuff that hasn't been told to the GP, which in fact could change your treatment plan. So we can then pass that information on back to the GP via the patient notes. So then if the GP needs to speak to the patient, that they can. I think the front end, there's lots of quick wins at the front end. Sometimes it's really basic situational stuff. It might be that they've had a breakdown in a conversation with a manager. The role slightly changed. So can we get them back to work on amended duties? So we will work with the employer, with the patient, with the occupational health team to build a back to work plan that suits the situation. And then we can put that in the patient note. So then the GP can then use that to issue a maybe fit for work note while we transition them back into work. So we could look at phased returns and things like that as well. And it could be the whole issue is nothing to do with work. It's nothing to do with health. There's a housing issue. So do we need to deal with the housing issue? Is there a benefit issue there as well that's changed to something situational that's changed? So it's very difficult to say this is the process of what we do with each patient, because it changes to the situation of the patient. But more and more we find the likes of housing issues and things like that are affecting the work thing. So people are taking time off work to sort that issue out. However, that then exaggerates the problem, and then they have an issue going back to work because of the confidence and self-esteem. And it's getting them back and sorting the situations out in a way that best fits the patient. And I think what I would say is the big thing with us, it's a voluntary service. The patients don't have to come back to see us. We've got a fail to attend rate of around about 2%, which for the client group is ridiculous, really. But it is. I think the big thing that we have to make that patient want to come back, so they can see the benefit from each interview of coming back and why they have to come back in and why it benefits them.
Thanks, Martin. Dr. Katie, if I can come to you now, please. We're just going to have a couple of questions around kind of the lessons that you've learned through this process. In your view, what do you think makes this model so successful? So kind of what are the key enablers of success?
The key enablers of success are that it, like Martin says, it's voluntary, that there's no exclusion criteria. There's no limit to the sessions or how frequently you can see Martin. There's no if you've seen him before, you can't be referred again. There's no rule like that. And there's no limit to, it's not just with these health conditions, on these types of benefits or the outer work, there's nothing like that. So yeah, and just his understanding of the holistic view, like you're saying, looking into the home situation, looking into the benefits, because caring responsibilities, everything like that you just can't do in a 10-minute GP consultation. So that's why you get the frequent attenders, because you're not getting to the crux of what's going on, but Martin has that time to do it. So that's the main things for us.
Thanks. Martin, same for you. Is there anything that you'd add?
No, it's pretty much that. I think it's a one-shop stop for everything that's not health. Now, obviously, we do use other providers as well. So if there's a need that we don't necessarily have the skill set for, we could refer into training providers. We could refer into Citizens Advice Bureau for debt advice. We could welfare rights and things like that as well. It is a one-stop shop for everything that's not health within the health environment. And I think we don't know everything, but we generally know the people that do. And it's pulling what's appropriate to that person to allow them to maximise the progress as quickly as possible.
Yeah, thank you. You've mentioned quite a few times around kind of trust and like relationships between patients and patient advisors, as well as between the service and the GPs that you're working with. I wonder if you could talk a bit more about that and how you build trust and strong working relationships, particularly with GPs and practice staff. And we do have one question from an attendee about whether there was any pushback from GP surgeries when you were first rolling out the pilot, and what has helped. So I'll roll those two questions into one, if that's okay.
Okay, I'll do the question first. Honest answer, no, because with the initial national pilot, it was, for want of a better word, quite woolly. And I basically went to the surgeries and said, I don't really know what you need. What do you want? And that's where we sort of built up there. I think the big advantage I had way back in 2008, there was no social prescribers. There's a lot of the support that's available there now isn't. So initially, I also did effectively the social prescribing role as well. So looking at the support for the health and things like that as well. So social prescribers coming in for us was really good. But I targeted training practices initially because I thought they would be more open to change, doing something different. And I think what we find with there is these advantage training practices, you have GPs that are doing 3 and 6 month placements that then move on to another surgery that haven't got the service. So 90% of the surgeries that we have got have been by recommendation or GPs moving into another practice that hasn't got us. Because I think it's a big culture shock for somebody that's had this to suddenly not have it. So a lot of it was reputational. And at the beginning, regarding building relationships there, I was lots of attending meetings, very open with the GPs. This is where I feel there's a problem. Why aren't these referrals coming through? what do you think? How can we change this? So there was a lot of input from the GPs on how this model developed over the years. And if you compare it now to how it was pre-COVID, it's a very different service that we offer, because one, I think the patient's resilience has changed, and I think the GP is probably a lot more popular post-COVID than pre-COVID. So we're getting a lot more referrals through there as well. I think the one thing that we've never had an issue with is numbers. I think from the first day that we did this, we were fully booked, and we've been pretty much fully booked all the way through, to the point where most of our sites are now booking 2 weeks in advance, which is more than we would want it to. Obviously, with Katie's site, we've just given them an extra session now as well to keep up with numbers. But initially, it was getting that GP involvement. It was, what do you want? What do you need from me? Because I had pretty much a blank canvas to build it as we saw fit moving forward, and how much changed.
And if I can jump in there, just with Martin building it with us, it's just meant like the ease of booking appointments. There's no long referral form, which is like a bugbear of GPs. All of that is all on our system. So, you know, I can flip onto Martin's appointment screen and the patient's with me, and I can book them in straight away. That our receptionists understand the you know, everything is just seamless, because he's asked what's easiest for us to do, rather than this is the form that you have to fill in to get into the system. The other thing I would say is I'm quite careful sometimes with how I phrase what Martin does, because there's such a resistance with patients for anybody who works anything related to the job centre. So, and I think Martin's quite happy with that. Well, I hope you're quite happy with that, Martin, that, you know, describe him as like a job support, job coach, you know, whatever it is, but he doesn't have a role, you know, he doesn't present himself as this is what I am and who I work for, and this is where I get my funding from, or whatever. So the patients are happy to see him for that reason as well.
Thanks. And actually, you've just mentioned funding, and it's been a question that's been put in the chat. So Martin, do you mind saying a bit more about how you are funded?
Yeah, from when National Pilot ended in 2010, we effectively are unfunded. We are a resource taken directly off job centre staffing, so we are taking out job centre figures. Because of the results that we generate, our district is obviously very proactive in this, and they can see that we are more effective in this environment than what we would be necessarily in the job centre, because the number of people we stop getting to the stage where they need to claim benefits far outweighs a bum on a seat in the job centre, for want of a better expression. And just picking up on what Katie said there, in the initial interview, a lot about we go through the consent process, who we are, what our role is, where we fit in the surgery, that we feed back to the GPs, the information that we will keep as a DWP service to evidence what we do. So the patient's fully aware of who we are and what we do. And I think the way we would phrase it to a GP is, we're employed by the DWP. This is a DWP funded service. However, I'm seeing you as a patient. My role is basically to support the doctor, to support you.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you. So I'm sure this journey hasn't been without its challenges, and there's a lot of great kind of successes that you've had. But I wonder if we can reflect on what those challenges have been, and particularly since the kind of pilot came to an end, and those, what have been the biggest challenges in sustaining and scaling the model in Durham Tees Valley?
The issue that we've always had is resource. We could double our resource and still probably not have enough. We've had a waiting list of surgeries. Obviously, we're working quite closely with the ICB up here now, who are going to run work well alongside us. So in the sites that don't have us, the model looks like they're going to run in those sites that will be offered to those sites where we can't accommodate. So there will be the work well service running alongside the PAS service, offering a very similar role. Appointment wise, as I say, I think cloning is something we've considered, but we haven't quite got there yet. I think they could do with about 15 of us, but money talks, as I say. But obviously, moving forward, we're in a better position now with the ICB, so at least the services that we can't, surgeries we can't cover, could potentially have a version of the service.
That's helpful. Are there any lessons that you've learned, or Dr. Katie, question for you as well, about what doesn't work, or kind of pitfalls that other areas on this call could avoid?
I think the fact that it's face to face, that it's based in the surgery, is key. I think during COVID, we effectively kept the service going via telephony, and with the patients that we're working with, because we do a lot of visual stuff with them within the appointments, we have a lot less success over telephone than what we do in a face-to-face appointment. And I think it's easy to book a telephone appointment for a patient, but if we're going to get to the stage where they're having to go back to work, they have to come out the house to do that. And I think by making them come in for appointments, it's all part of that process to get them used to coming out, to get them to re-engage as well. Because I think what I've learned over the long time that I've been doing this is within about 8 weeks, confidence starts to go, social isolation starts to kick in, the reluctance to go out and do stuff, to stop the social things. So I'm not going to add to that by saying, well, you don't have to come in and see me. Well, this is the point where we're at now. You do need to come in. This is what we need to do. And I think face-to-face appointments are considerably better.
Anything that you'd like to add to that, Dr. Katie, around kind of pitfalls?
No, I can't really think apart from like what Martin's saying about we need more of him. But apart from that, there's very few pitfalls. There's few challenges really. It's been pretty easy. He's made it very easy for us.
Great, thank you. There's a couple of questions in the chat around the type of situations that are coming to you, Martin, and how many are, I don't know if you could give an estimate of roughly how many are kind of employment related versus the other things that you've spoken around being non-health.
If you'd have asked me this 5 years ago, it was predominantly long-term health. Now I would say we're predominantly work-based issues. I think there's been a noticeable shift with how employers treat employees since COVID. And there's a lot of things happening post-COVID that certainly weren't happening before. So we're dealing with a lot more stuff like grievances, relationship breakdowns, role changes, situational changes that are relatively new to us, to be honest, in a lot of cases as well. So we're spending a lot more time working with the likes of ACAS and trade unions as well to support patients as well. So I think that's been a noticeable shift there. But I would say, if percentage-wise, we're probably dealing 70% employed, 30% long-term benefit customers now.
That's really good. Thank you. Someone's got quite a specific question around whether you're finding ADHD to be a condition that's showing up as a kind of reason for people struggling to stay in work or get back into work, and what are your reflections on that?
Yes, I think certainly more and more. I think a lot of the time it's how there's a lot. I think probably Katie will agree with me there. I think you're getting a lot more older people now going through an ADHD autism route way, and the conversations that we're having with them are, well, what's changed? You were managing your role before you started to go on the route way, so what's actually changed with you in the job so you can't do it now? What support do you need? What do we need to look to alter? Is it that do we need to look at amending your duties with your employer? But certainly, yeah, ADHD and things like that are much more relevant than what they are. And I think the odd thing that we find with this is we seem to find that conditions go in trends. So ADHD and learning difficulties seems to have replaced fibromyalgia as our main one at the moment. But it'll change again.
Great, thank you. There's one question also around, so I know you mentioned FitNote earlier, and that's how a kind of key way you get referrals to PASS, the PASS patient advisor. Do you issue FitNotes yourself, and how does the process work? So I know other people have reflected in the Q&A that sometimes a patient phones the surgery asking for a FitNote and kind of just expecting to have either a quick conversation and then to get that FitNote and move on. And how does that fit with the service that you're providing?
We support with the FitNote. We don't make any decisions on the FitNote. There may be a situation where, for example, if somebody's gone through a grievance process, we might advise that realistically this grievance process is going to take 6 to 8 weeks. It's unrealistic for that patient to go back.
Is Martin frozen a bit there?
So.
Yeah, so I'll just take it just to explain. So yeah, Martin might send us.
So
You're back, Martin.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, I don't know where you caught that. So basically, we will send guidance to the GP to say this is where we feel that the patient is. These are the situations that they're going through. This might be the timescale that they need. It might be that somebody's been claiming universal credit as a job seeker, but wants to transition onto the universal credit side of it on a health journey because there's a health problem. So then it could be advising the GP that realistically this patient should be on the health journey on universal credit. So we would need to cover that fit note period to when they've had the work capability assessment. So that could be an 8 or 9 week fit note, because otherwise all you end up doing is doing a 3-week fit note and then bringing them back in to do another fit note and another fit note, where I'll continue working with that patient whilst they're going through the process. But let's get the paperwork done so we know that that's done and boxed off, really. Now, our advice is supporting the GP to make a decision on the fit note. But a lot of the time it just sort of takes an extra consultation out for the GP.
And I think that is when you say that you're advising us on this fit note, because I think there's a perception that there's an awful lot of thought that goes into a fit note, and that we're sat here thinking, should I issue this fit note and should I not? When the reality of the situation is that we get so many hundreds a week of fit notes that there's not that thought, that it is sometimes just sent out, particularly if they've had one before. Can you have it for the same condition? It just goes out, which is not good practice, and we don't feel good doing it, but that's just how it is at the minute. So having that guidance from Martin is really valuable, so that you can put a bit more detail in the fit note, that the patient has the expectation that it's not forever, it's got a timeline on it. So he does a much better job, even though he's not issuing the fit note. I'd rather have a task from Martin, so this is what you can put, and I feel a bit better about writing those fit notes than I do the ones that are just coming as a phone call or a task or things like that.
And obviously now in e-consultation world as well, there's a lot of our surgeries now that are full e-consultation triage. So a lot of the fit notes are issued on the back of an e-consult, so there's not necessarily a conversation to be had. But we're saying in those circumstances, if you're just issuing it on an e-consult, book them in with us, so at least somebody's had eyes on the patient. And then we can give support moving forward with that.
Yeah, great, thanks. Dr. Katie, I know you've got to drop off soon, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. But just before you do, I wondered whether I could ask one quick question, which is around I guess an ongoing discussion on the Workwell program around incentivizing referrals from GPs into the program, and whether that my presumption is that hasn't happened with PASS, but just to confirm that, and why I get the reasoning, your views on that. Sorry.
So incentivizing, do you mean making an incentive for us to use the scheme?
Financially.
Yeah, so no, there's no financial incentive that to use it. It's just to try and ease our burden of work, and that is a massive incentive. I think that is even more than if you were to say this many pence per patient, or this, for every referral. I think if we could completely get rid of our sort of triage of fit notes by sort of making an open access to PAS or Workwell or whatever it is, that's more of an incentive for GPs. It's workload rather than sort of financial. I think at the minute would be a bigger incentive.
Thank you. Yes, that's great. Thank you. Dr. Katie, thank you for joining. If you need
I've got to go. If that's all right. But I'm really, anything else you need to email, I'm really happy to answer anything. I feel really passionate about this, the sort of culture that we've got around fit notes and things. So anything I can do to help, I'd be pleased to.
Right. Thanks for your time and have a good day.
Thanks a lot. You too.
Great. Martin, just back to you then, one man show. There's been a question kind of around how this connect to work. I don't know if how that runs in your area, whether Durham Tees Valley is a connect to work area, but how kind of different employment programs fit together.
Well, connect to work, it would be no different to any of the other programs as a job centre work coach that we would look to use, to be honest. We work with all sorts of different providers offering different things. The connect to work thing is not quite there here yet. It will be, and we work quite closely with the local authorities anyway, and we use the local authority health hub quite a lot as well for additional types of support. So if the services are there and they're beneficial for the patient, we would most certainly use them. But a lot of the stuff that the connect and the work programs we actually do within the surgery. So as part of our caseloading process, we do goal and techniques. We do CV preparation. We'll do practice interviews. We look at support needs with the likes of access to work. We look at training programs, local community centres. So we work with all of them as well. But we do the bulk of it within the surgery.
Thank you. I know you kind of explained earlier how PASS works across different PCNs and the kind of news around your ICB. Do you mind saying a bit more around, we've had one question in the chat around, it's great to have one coach in a single practice, which makes it easier for staff to book direct appointments and build processes. But how does this work across multiple practices? So just mind going back to your answer around what it looks like in practice.
Yeah, as a team, we work on a 2-week rota. So each surgery has got their allocated advisor for that allocated slot over that 2-week period. So we have some surgeries that require half a day a fortnight. We have some that have 3 days a fortnight, depending on size and how progressive they are. The continuity of the work coach, I think, is really, really important. Initially, it's building up that relationship with the GPs, and then obviously on the back of that, it allows you to build up the relationship with the patient. And what you find over time is the patient's now self-referring to us when there's a work-related issue as opposed to going to see the doctor.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately where the aim is. And we've been doing this a long time. So it's pretty much normal business for our surgeries now that this is the case. But we get an awful lot of patients now that self-refer. We get the social prescribers referring to us. We get the counselling teams and mental health practitioners referring into us as well. But I think when we're caseloading a patient, regardless of what other support they're accessing, we will see them through that journey. So we are the constant. So it could be someone going through chemotherapy, it could be someone going through counselling. We will work with that person throughout the process. Now, in relation to cancers and things like that, is we've done an awful lot of work with not just the patient, but also the patient's spouse, the patient's partner as well, because obviously, particularly if it's terminal diagnosis, the support then shifts to the partner. So what does the future look like for them? And we've had some really good feedback from the terminal patients that they know that the partner's looked after and there's a plan in place for that patient to move forward as well. So they know what the structures are and they know they're going to be looked after and supported moving forward. And things like that are game changers, not necessarily in outcome-wise, i.e. jobs and things like that, but for that person, that makes a world of difference for them looking forward.
Yeah. Just going back to what you mentioned around self-referrals, how easy is it for patients to self-refer? Is that because they know you already and have had an appointment before, or is it that you could be a new patient?
It could be either. We get an awful lot from patient recommendations. I think there's a video that you're going to share there with one of my patients as well that I think she's kept me in business for weeks and weeks and weeks with referrals that she's made into me. And it's all reputational. Like I say, it's a voluntary service. People don't have to come in and see us. We have to make sure that the interviews are spot on. We have to make sure that that patient wants to come back. It doesn't work for everybody. Nothing does. But as I say, with the fail to attend rate and the success that we're getting and the self-referrals and what have you that we do get from patients and them coming back to ourselves and recommendations to family and things like that, suggests that they enjoy the service. There has been a study done on PAS via Imperial College. So if you wanted to Google that, it is there somewhere.
Share that in the email following the webinar.
Yeah.
The videos are really great as well of your kind of patient case studies. So I'll share those with the team.
And I think the one thing that they all say is the fact that it's embedded within the surgery and it's a link that we can transition between the GP as well. One, because in a lot of cases it helps them with not having an appointment because we can get a message to a GP, but then that gives the GP the option of contacting the patient if they feel that they need to, if something's changed. I think certainly when we're building back to work plans and graduated returns, it's when we're doing that graduated return, we'll review them 2 weeks before the end of that return to see whether we need to look for a maybe fit for work note to extend that, or maybe at that point is the decision then we'll keep you working where you are, but we look for something else. I think of our longer term employed people that are off work, 60% of them go back to a different job. So we support them into new work as opposed to the stereotypical example is your labourer with arthritis. It's can we get them back on slightly amended duty so that it's not quite as physical for them. But it's then having the conversation with, realistically, you're damaging your health by doing this role. Where can we take you that sort of fits better for you? So we've had, for example, somebody who was a drainage engineer who'd done it for 30 odd years, literally couldn't get down the hole anymore. He'd been off work for 3 months. Work had given him effectively gardening leave for another 2 months. So we had another 2 month window to work with where he was still getting paid.
Yeah.
The conversations with him were all around him, how much of a social guy he was, how he like working men's clubs, social clubs, things like that, but working with older people, but not in a care sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we used those 2 months to get him some voluntary work in an old people's home as an activities coordinator.
Yeah.
They'd taken him on within 3 weeks. Managing his condition better. He's not going to see the doctor as much. He's not taking as much medication. Obviously, he's taken a little bit of a hit financially, but he can sustain it. So
Yeah.
it's a massive win for him by change. And I think it's easy to presume that we can shoehorn somebody back to where they were. Now, maybe you can do that in a temporary measure in some cases, but in a lot of cases, where they were is part of the problem. Now, it
Yeah.
could be mechanical. It could be the relationships are completely broken down. It could be somebody with a bad shoulder that works on a production line that does the same movement all day, can't go back on that production line. So is there
Yeah, it's
something
got good
in the
workers at
environment
that
that he's
point.
in? Yeah, and how do you change that?
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned earlier around kind of liaising with employers as well, and a slightly different angle, but I think one of the big challenges on Workwell, on the Workwell program so far has been getting that kind of employer engagement, and there's challenges that come with that, including that Workwell has been a short-term program. So it's kind of building that trust. But any advice on how you go around engaging employers, and probably not from the sense that they'll refer into the service necessarily, but how you get them to kind of listen and be interested and view work as a health outcome?
I think our role is to coach the patient to be able to deal with the situation themselves, so that if it happens again, they've got tools to deal with it. So to get the employee's engagement initially, it's we go to the patient and say, this is where you are, this is the situation, these are your potential options, have to refer to occupational health, have a look at the amended duties, go and speak to your employer about that. Do you want to have a 3-way conversation with your employer? So we'll speak with the patient and the employer to build up the relationships there. I think one of the main things that conversations we have with employees is don't sell occupational health referrals as a threat. As part of a sickness review, occupational health is really beneficial for the employer and the patient if it's not sold as something that's threatening. And a lot of employers do use Occy Health basically as a tool to beat the patient with. And it's saying to the employer, you need to sell this positively because it would potentially get your employer back to work. They might identify reasonable adjustments in the workplace that you haven't considered. Then we can then help you with maybe access to work if they need new equipment and things like that as well.
Yeah, that's great. I think we've covered most of the questions in the chat. One quite specific one before I come to you for a final kind of overarching question was just around what happens in those 16 appointments a day that you said kind of on average. Is that where the patient advisor is supporting with CV and interview prep, kind of all the support happens within those, is it half an hour?
Yeah, half a point. Yeah. I mean, every day is a school day for us as well. Because a lot of the time we don't know what we're coming into. We don't know how that patient's going to be, what the solution is. But obviously we have caseloads within there as well. So these are people with follow-up appointments. But we do give the patients homework to do. We do give them a lot of work, particularly if we're looking at change. We do a lot of stuff regarding reflection on what they've done before, what's important to them, what do they want a job to look like, what skills have they got. So and from our point of view, it's also a way of testing the commitment because they don't have to be here. And what we don't want them to come in is just to come in for a cosy chat. We do push them, we do work them hard, but in a controlled way. And I think some of the quality of some of the tasks and the homework that we get back from the patients is outstanding. But quite a lot of the time, we actually take the job out of the equation when we're doing goal setting. It's what's important to you, what skill sets have you got that you want to take to another area, and keep it fairly vague initially, and then allow them to say, well, this is important to us. And I do it on a don't want need list I use quite regularly. And then as soon as they come in, I rip the don't wants off the bit of paper. and say, well, this is what we're focusing on now. This is
Yeah.
what's important to you.
Yeah.
And this is where you get the direction, because there's so many transferable skills that can take them into other areas that they're not even considered. But it's like anything else. It's 18, you fall into a job. 24, that job's going to let you to have a house. 28, you're married, you've got a kid. Don't like my job, but I'm trapped.
Mm.
And that's certainly where the mental health and the confidence issues comes from, because people feel that they're trapped in a role. And there's a big world out there, but the decision that they made at 18 isn't necessarily the solution at 30, 40, 50, whatever.
Yeah. Thanks, Martin. That's been a lot of useful insight, and thanks for people for sending your questions in. One more question then before we wrap up, so to give people a bit of time to get to next meetings. What advice would you offer for other areas, especially around kind of getting started within primary care?
I think it's give the GPs the option to find out what they feel that they need, get them involved. This is what we're looking to do. What do you think?
Mm.
As your surgery, what problems do you have regarding the fit note process? What sort of issues are having with people that are employed? Let them tell you where the needs are, because that gives them ownership as well, and it gets them involved in it as well, as opposed to going in and saying, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think certainly with the national pilot many moons ago, there was lots of areas that went in with very specific criteria. And I think what we've got to acknowledge is we're always the last referral in what a GP is doing, because they'll look at the health stuff first. So we've got to make our bit as easy as possible for them, just to say 2 clicks of a button, your appointment's booked. Martin will go through what he does, but he's here to support me, to support you, looking at all the stuff that I don't do.
Yeah. Thanks, Martin. That's really helpful reflection to end on. I just wanted to share a couple of points that I've taken from our conversation today. So firstly, embedding the service into GP practices in a way that makes the referral process really seamless has made a difference. So you said earlier, patients experience a referral to PAS as naturally as being sent for a blood test, a diabetes test, and that this doesn't involve any extra paperwork for GPs, and that gives them confidence to kind of make this business as usual within their practices. Second point is that patients trust their GPs, so that drives attendance with your service and creates that kind of really low fail to attend dropout rate, and that it's a voluntary service as well. And that finally, relationships are key to all of this, and that's relationships between the patients and patient advisors, but also the service and GP practices, and that this comes down to trust, and that takes time. Great.
I think the key is it's perception change. It's certainly initially to help the GP realise that a lot of the time they're not dealing with a health issue, they're dealing with a situational thing that's affecting their health. It's perception change to the patient, that they can take ownership of the situation. And also sometimes getting the patient to acknowledge that actually the GP's done everything that they can with them. They're giving them the fit notes, they're giving them the medication, the treatment plan. Why do they need to see the GP on the back of that? Ultimately, it's now down to you to make the changes to improve your situation. And it might be they've got much more restriction than what they had previously. But what does their new world look like within the restrictions that they've got? And how can that, A, get them back to work, help them manage the condition better, have a better quality of life, financially be more secure, and actually have the confidence then to make the decisions to, in a lot of cases, for change.
Yeah. Great. Thanks very much, Martin, and thanks also to Dr. Katie, who joined us this morning. I hope everyone found the webinar helpful. I'll circulate a copy of the recording following this, as well as the links to the videos that Martin mentioned. If people do have any further questions, please do get in touch with me, and also watch this space for more webinars on work, health and skills. So a final thanks again to Martin and Dr. Katie, and thank you for joining us today. Hope everyone has a good end of their rest of their day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.